In this video, I will talk about catastrophic thoughts, or catastrophizing, and I'm going to teach you some techniques to replace this type of thinking with something healthier and more functional. So let's meet Kate. Kate had been unemployed for 6 months, and finally, after sending several CVs, she was finally invited to participate in an interview. She had researched the company, talked to a colleague who works at that company, chosen a nice outfit, in short, prepared for the interview as best she could. It was scheduled for 2 p.m., and she couldn't sleep well that night, waking up several times, thinking she might be late. When he got up, he got ready, had lunch, but halfway through, he started thinking, it's been a long time since I took part in an interview. I won't be able to express myself well. I should have worn a more neutral blouse. I shouldn't have come wearing boots. I've never touched the computer again, so I don't know how to open programs anymore. I'm not going to pass this interview. With all these thoughts invading her mind, she left the subway and returned home. He sent an email to the company saying that there was an unforeseen situation and that he would not be able to attend the interview. So what is catastrophizing? Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion, a thinking error that is even very common. It's when we think of a future situation as a catastrophe. It's when we imagine and are often sure that the worst will happen. Catastrophizing is imagining the worst case scenario. It's taking a difficult situation and interpreting it as horrible, terrible, and irrecoverable. Just like in Kate's story, catastrophizing usually begins with commonplace commitments, such as a job interview, a doctor's appointment, a test, a work presentation. But then the error of thinking transforms this reality into a belief that something horrible is about to happen. So, Kate thought she wouldn't do well in the interview and had avoidance and escape behavior. At its root, catastrophizing has to do with our habitual response to challenges or difficulties. So ask yourself, how do you think about failure? When these habits become a pattern, a behavior repeated in several different situations, they can lead to depression or anxiety. So here are some common examples. Someone with anxiety imagines losing control of themselves. A man with panic disorder imagines that if he goes to the mall on a weekend afternoon, he will have a panic attack, and then predicts that having a panic attack would be a catastrophe rather than actually being uncomfortable. Or a woman with depression imagines herself being depressed forever, that she will never feel happy again. Or a teenager equates some more common type of social rejection with being completely avoided by everyone he interacts with. So how does catastrophizing get in the way? We've all been through some difficult situations in our lives, including rejection or failure, and we fool ourselves into believing that if we wait for the worst to happen, we can avoid it. But in reality, the opposite often happens. So, think about Kate's story. She was afraid she wouldn't do well in the interview, so she didn't show up and remained without a job. Continuing without a job reinforces the belief of being a failure. Seeing the worst often invites you to the worst, so expecting the worst and preventing it from happening by avoiding it confirms the worst. Catastrophizing is also an invitation to depression. When we imagine a dark, threatening, or hopeless future, our brain responds by releasing less serotonin and less dopamine. Why be happy or hopeful when the future is incredibly bleak? This thinking leads to a cycle of withdrawal from life, lack of motivation, and a pattern of depression. Catastrophizing also invites anxiety, as it forces our brain to see threats and failures everywhere. Our brain responds to perceived threats with a very real fear response and emits fight and flight behavior. This contributes to social anxiety, general anxiety, panic attacks, and more. The most common question is, why try if I'm going to fail? Catastrophizing takes away opportunities and options that could work, and this leads to a feeling of paralysis. So if catastrophizing is so harmful, why do we keep doing it? Because preparing for the worst is a safe coping strategy. It prevents us from experiencing risks and uncertainties. If I'm going to fail, I better not take any chances. That's the only way I won't be disappointed. Catastrophizing is a thought that avoids suffering, avoids feelings of sadness or worry. But the most interesting thing is that the more we avoid it, the more we feel. In the short term, it is the best thing to do. Kate avoided the discomfort momentarily, but is still unemployed. In the long term, sadness turns into depression. You don't risk failure. On the other hand, you will never succeed. So how do you stop catastrophizing? Number 1. Sleep well. Kate didn't sleep well. When we are sleep deprived, we are hypersensitive to threats and less resilient in the face of challenges. When you are rested, you will have a greater capacity to face these challenges with courage. Number 2. Accept uncertainty as natural. This is a skill that can be developed and trained. It involves changing the way you think about anxiety. So instead of labeling anxiety as bad or harmful, consider that it can be uncomfortable, and it is, but it's not unbearable. Accept the risk and accept the anxiety that accompanies the risk as something something natural and useful, as it is the anxiety that will prepare you to face the risks. In Kate's case, anxiety made her prepare, plan the clothes she would wear, research the company she would work for. This type of anxiety is normal and important. The problem is when anxiety is pathological. Number 3, motivate yourself from your values. What do you want to achieve in your life? What do you value? What are your goals? Pick one, boil it down to small goals, and work toward them little by little. Number 4, notice what situations you tend to catastrophize about. Write down the thoughts that arise. Identify the emotions corresponding to those thoughts. Challenge those thoughts. Look for realistic evidence that those thoughts are true. Most of the time not they are. Don't believe everything you think. Doubt your thoughts. Learn to notice and gently question your thoughts. You shouldn't believe everything you think. But also, don't blame yourself for having those thoughts, saying things like, "What's the matter with me? Why do I always think like this?" Instead, notice your thoughts and let them pass by, like a wave. Number 5, replace those thoughts with something more real, honest, and helpful. To do this, consider other possible outcomes. Even if something bad happens, you could learn from it. Think, what if this really happens? What will happen next? And then, asking this Socratic question will help you conclude that the ending is not as bad as we imagine. How could Kate think? Okay, it's been a long time since I participated in a job interview, and I no longer have that practice, and I may not actually be approved, but I don't really have a job anymore. If I don't pass, I stay where I am, but I will have a new experience, and suddenly, next time, this experience can help me. But if I don't participate in the interview, I won't even have that experience. Thinking in this more functional way, analyzing all the possibilities, she could have participated in the interview and run the risk of being approved.